Welcome to the vaults of the unwelcome truths. Tonight we uncover the lies told in their names. Chapter 3, The Enlightenment's Shadow. The Enlightenment was heralded as an age of reason, a time when humanity began to cast off the shackles of superstition and embrace the light of knowledge. I watched as philosophers and scientists challenged the old order, their ideas spreading like wildfire across Europe. The Church's grip on the minds of men began to loosen. It seemed as though humanity might finally free itself from the cycle of manipulation and control. Yet, even in this age of reason, the old patterns persisted. The French Revolution, that great upheaval which promised liberty, equality, and fraternity, was a stark reminder of how easily ideals could be corrupted. The revolutionaries, inspired by the Enlightenment, sought to overthrow the old order and create a new society based on reason and justice. But their fervor quickly turned to fanaticism, and the reign of terror followed. I walked the streets of Paris, watching as the guillotine claimed its victims, the blood of the old aristocracy mingling with that of the revolution's own children. The Committee of Public Safety, led by Robespierre, wielded its power with an iron fist, rooting out enemies of the revolution with ruthless efficiency. The de-Christianization campaign, which sought to eradicate the influence of the Church, replaced one form of dogma with another. The cult of reason and later the cult of the supreme being were imposed, new gods for a new age, but the same old tools of control and coercion were used. Napoleon Bonaparte, a child of the Revolution, rose to power with promises of restoring order and spreading the principles of liberty and equality. Yet he crowned himself emperor, a stark contradiction to the ideals he professed. He used religion as a tool to legitimize his rule, signing the Concordat of 1801 with the Pope to re-establish the Church's influence in France. His campaigns of conquest, waged under the banner of spreading the revolution, brought untold suffering to Europe. I watched as his Grande Armée marched across the continent, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Across the Atlantic, the American Revolution offered another glimpse of hope. The Founding Fathers, inspired by Enlightenment principles, sought to create a republic based on the ideals of liberty and justice. The separation of church and state was enshrined in the Constitution, a bold experiment in governance. Yet even here, the old patterns emerged. The institution of slavery, justified by distorted interpretations of Scripture, persisted. The expansion westward, driven by the belief in manifest destiny, brought devastation to the indigenous peoples. The promise of a new beginning was tainted by the same old sins. In the heart of Europe, the Industrial Revolution brought profound changes. Factories sprang up, cities grew, and with them came a new form of exploitation. The working class, those who toiled in the mills and mines, found themselves at the mercy of industrial barons who wielded their power with little regard for human dignity. The Church, which had once been the sole arbiter of moral authority, found itself competing with new ideologies. Socialism and communism, with their promises of workers' liberation, began to spread. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, with their manifesto, declared religion to be the opiate of the masses, a tool of the ruling class to keep the proletariat in check. Yet, even in these new ideologies, the same patterns of manipulation and control emerged. The Russian Revolution, which sought to create a classless society, quickly devolved into tyranny. I watched as Lenin and later Stalin used the rhetoric of revolution to justify purges, labor camps, and state terror. The gulags, those frozen hells where millions perished, were a grim testament to the ways in which ideology could be twisted to serve the ambitions of a few. In the meantime, the old religions adapted, finding new ways to exert their influence. The Catholic Church, under the leadership of Pope Pius IX, convened the First Vatican Council, asserting the doctrine of papal infallibility. It was a clear attempt to reassert the Church's authority in a rapidly changing world. The Protestant denominations, too, found new ways to entrench their influence, aligning themselves with the rising powers of the age. The First World War, that cataclysmic conflict, was a stark reminder of how easily the ideals of progress and reason could be twisted into instruments of destruction. I saw how the war was framed as a crusade, a battle between the forces of good and evil, with each side claiming divine favor. The slaughter in the trenches, the senseless loss of life, were stark reminders that the old patterns of manipulation and control had not been eradicated, merely transformed. The interwar period brought with it the rise of totalitarian regimes, which used ideology with the same fervor that medieval kings had used religion. In Germany, Hitler's Nazi party rose to power, promising to restore the nation's greatness. The swastika, an ancient symbol twisted into a new emblem of hate, became a rallying point for millions. The regime's propaganda machine, led by Goebbels, used every tool at its disposal to manipulate the masses, invoking a perverse form of mysticism to justify its atrocities. The Holocaust, the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews, along with millions of others deemed undesirable, was a chilling reminder of how easily the rhetoric of purity and salvation could be twisted into instruments of genocide. In the East, Mao Zedong's Communist Party seized power in China, promising liberation from imperialism and feudal oppression. The Cultural Revolution, a decade of chaos and violence, saw millions persecuted in the name of ideological purity. Temples were destroyed, intellectuals were humiliated, and traditional culture was uprooted. The promise of a utopian society devolved into a nightmare of totalitarian control. Then came the Second World War, an even more brutal conflict, which culminated in the most devastating weapon humanity had ever seen, the atom bomb. In August 1945, I stood on a hill overlooking Hiroshima, watching as the Enola Gay soared overhead. The flash of light, brighter than 1,000 suns, marked the dawn of a new age. The mushroom cloud that followed was a grim testament to the destructive power that science, that great beacon of the Enlightenment, could unleash. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, justified as a means to end the war and save lives, were stark reminders that even the most noble of intentions could be twisted into acts of unimaginable horror. Through it all, I remained a witness to the unending cycle of human folly. The Enlightenment, for all its promise of reason and progress, had not broken the pattern. Ideals were still twisted, beliefs still manipulated, and the masses still controlled. The names and faces changed, but the underlying truth remained the same. Faith, whether in gods or ideologies, was too often a tool for those who sought power. And so, I continue to wander through the centuries, a silent observer of the ways in which men twist the divine and the ideological to their own ends. The Enlightenment's shadow stretches long, a reminder that even in the age of reason, the fires of faith and fanaticism still burn bright. The gods may be immortal, but so too are the lies told in their name.